The sun hung low over Silvervale, painting the land in copper and fire. The air shimmered with dust and heat, carrying the faint smell of rain that would never come. Out on the ridge rode a lone cowboy. His hat pulled low, his shirt torn at the shoulder, and his horse limping on a cracked hoof. His name was Jace Halloran, though few knew it, and fewer cared to. He'd been drifting for months, working ranch to ranch, taking coin where it was offered, and leaving before anyone could remember his face. That evening, though, fate had other plans. As his horse stumbled near a weathered fence line, Jace swung down to steady her. The animal snorted, exhausted. A lantern flickered in the distance, soft, golden light spilling from the porch of a whitewashed farmhouse standing proud against the dying sun. The Callahan Ranch. He didn't plan on stopping. But when he saw the woman on the porch, hand shading her eyes, he knew he wasn't moving on just yet. "Need help there, stranger?" she called, her voice steady but cautious. Jace nodded once, tugging his hat lower. Horse threw a shoe. "Just need a hammer and a bit of kindness." The woman stepped closer, her figure tall and sure, framed by the fading light. Mara Callahan, the eldest of the 3 Callahan sisters, was known across the valley as the woman who ran her father's ranch alone after he passed. People said she was cold, heartless even, but Jace saw something else behind her hard eyes. Exhaustion, and a strength that came from never letting yourself fall apart. "You can stable her out back," Mara said after a pause. "Supper's near ready. You can eat if you're honest workin'." "I am," Jace replied simply. As the barn door creaked open, another voice drifted from inside. Brighter, sharper. Ellen Callahan, the middle sister, appeared with a pitchfork in hand and suspicion in her gaze. "We don't feed every drifter who passes through, Mara," she said, sizing him up. "He could be anyone." "Then let's find out who he is," Mara answered. Before he could speak, a third presence arrived. June, the youngest. Barefoot, hair in loose curls, carrying a bowl of oats for the horses. "He looks tired," she said softly. "Let him stay, at least tonight." Jace felt the words settle over him like a mercy he didn't deserve. He nodded in gratitude, and the smallest smile crossed June's face, a kindness so gentle it nearly undid him. Inside the house, the smell of cornbread and stew filled the air. The sisters ate quietly, each stealing glances at the stranger with the haunted eyes. When Mara asked where he came from, he said only, "West, too far to matter." He spoke little, but every word carried weight. His voice was low, steady, like rain promised but never falling. After supper, he offered to mend the broken fence line. Ellen scoffed but didn't stop him. Mara watched from the porch, arms crossed, trying to decide whether the quiet cowboy was a blessing or a storm. By the time the stars appeared, Jace was still out there, hammering by moonlight. The rhythm of it echoed across the land, steady as a heartbeat. Something in Silvervale shifted that night, something none of them could name. From her window, June whispered a prayer for the stranger. Ellen lay awake, wondering why she couldn't look away from him. And Mara, staring into the darkness, felt a flicker of warmth she hadn't allowed herself in years. Out by the fence, Jace looked back at the house, the faint light in the windows, the sound of laughter soft and far away, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like a man just passing through. He felt like a man on the edge of belonging. Morning broke over the Callahan Ranch in strokes of gold and silver, soft light spilling across the dry fields and weary fences. The air still carried the scent of ash from old drought fires, a reminder of how fragile life in Silvervale had become. Yet inside the Callahan house, the rhythm of survival continued. 3 sisters bound by duty, each carrying her own quiet ache. Jace Halloran rose before dawn, as he always did. By the time the sisters stirred, he had already drawn water from the well, split a stack of wood, and mended the chicken coop latch that had been loose for months. He didn't ask where things were kept, he simply knew. The house woke to the sound of his boots on the porch and the low hum of a man used to doing more than talking. From the kitchen window, June watched him work. She was the youngest, gentle-eyed and soft-spoken, her hands always busy with small, careful things. Bandages, bread dough, seed pouches. To her, Jace wasn't a stranger. He was the kind of man her prayers were shaped for. Worn, quiet, honest. She noticed the way he moved. Like every action meant something. She wanted to thank him, to offer kindness without scaring him away. "You've done more in a morning than most men manage in a week," she said, when he came in for breakfast. He tipped his hat slightly. Guess I don't know how to sit still. Her smile was small, but it reached her eyes. Maybe that's good. Around here, standing still can feel like giving up. In the doorway, Ellen rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her curiosity. The middle sister was all fire, quick to laugh, quicker to judge, and restless to the bone. Careful, June, she teased, pouring coffee. This one's got trouble written all over him. Jace didn't answer. He just took the coffee with a nod and looked out the window where the field stretched empty toward the horizon. Ellen caught the flicker in his gaze. Loneliness, regret, something unspoken. And for a moment, her teasing faltered. She'd spent her life dreaming of somewhere else, anywhere else. But looking at Jace, she wondered if freedom really looked like leaving. Or if it looked like him. Then there was Mara, the eldest, the one who ran the ranch and the household with a firm hand and a guarded heart. She entered the room with her usual authority, boots dusted, hair tied back, eyes sharp as glass. You plan to stay long hollerin'? She asked, arms crossed. Just till the horses sound, he said evenly. Or till you tell me to ride out. Mara studied him for a long moment, then nodded. We could use a steady hand through the dry spell. But don't mistake work for welcome. He didn't. Yet the way she said it, half warning, half invitation, stirred something deep in him. Over the next few days, the rhythm of their lives began to shift. Jace rode the fences with Mara, repaired the well pump with Ellen, and helped June plant the last of the corn in cracked earth. Each sister saw something different in him. Mara saw strength and silence, the kind she could lean on without ever saying she needed to. Ellen saw danger, the thrill of something untamed, someone who didn't belong to rules or roots. June saw peace, the gentleness she'd always believed still existed in men. But Jace? He saw pieces of the same heart split three ways, one fierce, one fragile, one forgiving. That night, as the wind whispered through the wheat fields, the sisters sat together on the porch, speaking softly of chores and weather, pretending not to listen for the sound of his boots by the barn. And Jace, standing alone beneath a sky heavy with stars, tried to tell himself he was only a guest passing through. But the truth came quiet and certain, carried on the wind. He'd already started to belong to them. The days grew longer, the sun harsher. By late July, the Callahan ranch was gasping beneath the drought's cruel hand. Dust coated everything, the fences, the porch rail, even the air itself. But through the weary heat, Jace Holleran stayed. He worked beside the sisters as though he'd always belonged to their land. Mara had given him a place to sleep in the loft above the barn, and though she claimed it was only until harvest, she hadn't mentioned a word about when that might be. The sisters had learned to move around him, June setting out water, Ellen asking for help with the windmill, Mara watching from a distance she could no longer quite keep. Jace spoke little, but when he did, his voice held weight. He never flirted, never boasted, yet his silence drew them more than any charm could. It was as though each sister saw her own reflection in that quiet, what she longed for, what she feared, what she could never say aloud. One evening, after the heat finally gave way to a copper twilight, Ellen found him out by the wheat field. He was standing by the fence, shirt damp with sweat, staring across the brittle stalks like a man lost between worlds. She approached with a jug of water, pretending not to care that her pulse quickened with every step. You work too hard for someone who's supposed to be leaving, she said, offering the jug. He took it, nodded once, drank. Some things don't feel right half done. Ellen smirked, trying to hide the hitch in her breath. And what about people? You leave them half done too? That made him look at her, really look. The way his gaze met hers, steady and unflinching, burned hotter than the sun had all day. I try not to start what I can't finish, he said softly. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then Ellen, reckless as always, stepped closer. The air between them trembled. Her hand brushed his arm, then his chest, lingering on the steady rhythm of his heart. She rose on her toes, kissed him once, quick, searching, scared. He didn't pull her in. He didn't push her away either. When she stepped back, her face flushed, her voice trembled like dry leaves. Forget it, she whispered. I wanted to know what it felt like. Before he could answer, she turned and fled toward the house. That night, Jace worked late mending the fence, hammer striking the posts in sharp, uneven beats. He couldn't shake the feel of that kiss, the confusion of it, the ache it left behind. But fate wasn't done testing him. A few days later, Mara found him near the barn at dusk. The sky was red, the kind of red that warned of storm or sorrow. She handed him a rope, helped him tie down a tarp before the wind rose. Their hands brushed once, twice, and something raw flickered in her eyes. "You don't have to fix everything, Halloran," she said. "You're not responsible for saving this place." He turned to her, eyes tired but kind. "Someone ought to try." She swallowed hard, and before she could stop herself, she kissed him. Not like Ellen. Her kiss was deep, slow, desperate. It wasn't about curiosity or rebellion. It was about loneliness meeting its match. When she pulled away, her breath shook. "That was a mistake," she whispered. He nodded, though the truth sat heavy in his chest. It hadn't felt like one. From her window upstairs, June saw them. She froze, heart twisting. She had known, deep down she had always known, that her sisters' hearts would turn toward the same man. But seeing it happen under the dying light tore something open inside her. She didn't cry. She only pressed her hand to the glass, whispering into the gathering dark, "God, please don't let this break us." But even heaven must have known. It already had begun. By August, the drought had turned the Callahan Ranch into a place of whispers and heat, where the air itself seemed to tremble with secrets. The fences stood straight, the horses were fed, and the days passed in order. But beneath that fragile peace, something dangerous had taken root. Everyone could feel it. Jace Halloran's quiet presence, once a comfort, had become a fault line. Each sister felt the shift, each in her own way, though none dared speak it aloud. Ellen grew restless. She threw herself into chores she didn't need to do, slamming doors and laughing too loudly to hide the sting in her chest. Her impulsive kiss with Jace haunted her. His stillness afterward, his refusal to chase or condemn her. It made her feel both rejected and relieved. But when she saw the way Mara avoided his eyes now, she knew the truth without words. One night she confronted her sister by the well. "You think I don't know?" Ellen snapped. "You think I can't see it written all over you?" Mara stiffened, her face unreadable in the moonlight. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," Ellen said bitterly. "You kissed him." The bucket slipped from Mara's hand and splashed at their feet. For a long moment she said nothing. Then in a voice low and shaking she replied, "It was one mistake. It won't happen again." Ellen's laughter broke like glass. "That's what I told myself." From the porch, June watched them, her heart aching, her fingers gripping the railing. She knew this would come, yet she wasn't ready for how sharp the pain would be. All her life she had been the gentle one, the peacekeeper, the one who made things right. But now the air was thick with something she couldn't fix. That same week, the town began to talk. Word traveled fast in Silvervale, and the whispers reached the ears of Reverend Clay, a man who prided himself on knowing everyone's business. He came by one Sunday afternoon under the pretense of checking on their well-being, but his eyes lingered too long on Jace. "It's kind of you to take in a drifter," the Reverend said to Mara, his tone heavy with judgment. "But a man's reputation follows him even if he doesn't speak of it." Mara's jaw tightened. "He's working hard, earning his keep." The Reverend gave her a slow, knowing nod. "A woman alone running a ranch can't afford to let tongues wag. The Lord frowns upon temptation." After he left, Mara stood on the porch for a long time, watching the dust trail fade into the horizon, her stomach twisted with anger, not at the Reverend but at herself. He was right about one thing. Temptation had already found them. That evening she found Jace in the barn mending a saddle strap. "You need to leave after the harvest," she said without looking at him. He set the strap down, his hands still. "If that's what you want." "It's what's best," she answered. But her voice cracked on the word. He nodded once, the silence between them stretching like barbed wire. "Then I'll stay until the work's done." The next few weeks were heavy with unspoken words. Jace kept his head down, though his eyes found Mara's when she least expected. Ellen avoided both of them, retreating into the hills whenever she could. And June, sweet, steady June, was the only one who still spoke to him without hesitation. One evening she brought him dinner in the barn. He thanked her quietly, and she lingered. "You don't have to go," she said. "Not for us. Not for what people say." He looked at her, sorrow shadowing his face. "Some things ain't meant to stay, June, even if they want to." She understood more than he thought. Her heart had learned to love in silence, and silence was all she had left to give. Outside, thunder rumbled across the plains for the first time in months. It wasn't rain yet, just a warning of what was coming. And in that warning, something inside the Callahan sisters began to break. The drought didn't end quietly. It ended with fire. The wind came first, dry and wild, sweeping across the Callahan ranch like a curse. It carried the scent of something burning, something far away but moving closer. By noon, smoke blurred the horizon. By dusk, flames licked the edge of the western pasture. Mara stood on the porch, her heart hammering against her ribs. "It's jumped the creek," she said. "If it reaches the stables..." Jace was already running, his voice steady but urgent. "We've got to drive the herd east, get the horses saddled, now." Ellen grabbed a kerchief and covered her mouth, eyes fierce with determination. "I'll help drive them out." June started for the house, panic rising. "The children's..." "Barn cats. Leave them," Mara shouted, but June was already gone, disappearing into the smoke. The fire came fast, too fast. The sky turned copper and black, and the air crackled with heat and terror. The sisters worked side by side, sweat and soot streaking their faces as they pushed the cattle through the eastern gate. Every sound was chaos. The crack of wood, the frightened bawl of animals, the low roar of the oncoming blaze. Jace rode along the fence line, his horse lathered in sweat, shouting orders through the wind. When he saw Ellen stumble near the flames, trying to free a trapped calf, his heart stopped. "Ellen!" She didn't hear him. The fence behind her caught, sparks raining around her like falling stars. Without thinking, Jace leapt from his saddle, tore off his jacket, and threw it over her. The heat scorched his arm as he dragged her clear, her body limp with exhaustion. "You fool," he rasped, coughing through the smoke. "You should have run." Her eyes fluttered open, wild with adrenaline. "Not without him," she gasped, nodding to the trembling calf at their feet. Even in the madness, he couldn't help it. He laughed low and rough, before hauling both her and the calf toward safety. By the time the flames died, the Callahan fields were ash. The fences were gone. The herd was scattered. But the house, by some miracle, still stood. Inside, June was kneeling by the table, tears cutting through the soot on her cheeks. She had managed to save the barn cats after all, 3 tiny creatures mewling in her apron. When she saw Jace carrying Ellen inside, burned and shaking, she ran to help. Mara followed behind, her face pale but steady. "Lay her down here," she said, pointing to the couch. Her hands didn't tremble even as her voice did. "I'll fetch the salve." Jace lowered Ellen gently. "She'll be all right," he said. But his arm, his right forearm, was raw and blistered from wrist to elbow. June noticed first. "You're hurt." He shook his head. "Just a scratch." She took his arm in her small hands, wrapping it carefully with strips of cloth. "Don't lie," she whispered. "You saved her." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, something wordless and pure. Gratitude, pain, love that didn't ask to be returned. That night, as the wind died and the embers cooled, the sisters sat in silence around the hearth. The fire outside had stolen everything, but inside another kind of fire still smoldered, unseen but alive. Mara finally spoke, her voice low. "When the rain comes, we'll start again." Jace looked into the flames. "If it comes." Ellen, half awake, murmured from the couch, "It will." "You said you wouldn't leave till the land stood again." He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth cracked from smoke and ash. "Then I guess I'm staying." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly across the darkened sky. Real this time. The first drop hit the porch roof with a soft, hollow sound. Then another, and when the rain began to fall, none of them spoke. Because they all knew it wasn't just the land that needed saving, it was them. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. It washed away the ash, filled the empty troughs, and brought the smell of wet earth back to Silvervale. The land sighed in relief, but inside the Callahan ranch house the air was heavier than ever. The fire had burned more than fields. It had burned away their walls, their pretenses, and every unspoken lie between them. When the storm finally broke, sunlight spilled through the kitchen window. Mara stood at the sink, scrubbing the same plate over and over. Ellen sat at the table, arm bandaged, her expression restless. June was quiet, mending a torn sleeve by the hearth. And in the doorway stood Jace Holleran, hat in hand, his gaze steady but uncertain. He looked like a man carrying too much truth. "I'll be leaving soon," he said softly. No one answered. The sound of dripping water from the eaves filled the silence. Finally, Mara turned, her eyes unreadable. "You don't have to rush off. There's still work to do. Repairs, fences, the herd." "I've done what I came to do," he interrupted. "Your land stands again." Ellen's chair scraped back. "That's it? You're just going to walk away like none of this ever happened?" His jaw tightened. "Maybe that's for the best," she laughed bitterly. "You kissed us, Jace, both of us. You made me believe I mattered to you." June's sewing needle stilled. Mara's hands went cold around the dish she still held. The words hung in the air like smoke. Mara set the plate down, her voice hard. "Ellen, stop." "No," Ellen snapped, standing. "You think I don't know? You think I didn't see you with him in the barn that night?" Mara froze. June's breath caught. The room went utterly still. Then softly June whispered, "Please, don't do this." But it was too late. Ellen's anger broke into tears. "You always take everything, Mara. The land, the decisions, now him. I loved him first." Mara's voice trembled, but she forced it steady. "And what would you have me do? Pretend I didn't feel what I felt?" "That would have been a start," Ellen hissed. Through it all, Jace stood silent, the storm outside echoing the one inside. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough and low. "You both deserve better than this, better than me." June stood then, her gentle face pale but resolved. She walked between them, her hands trembling. "Stop," she said quietly. "All of you. You're tearing this family apart for something that was never meant to be." Mara looked at her, startled. "June, no." Her voice cracked, but she held her ground. "You can't have all of us, Jace." He met her eyes, pain shadowing his features. "I never meant to." "But you did," June said softly. "You didn't choose us with words or promises. You chose us with kindness, with silence, with every look that said more than it should. We all felt it. We all mistook it for love." Her words landed heavy, undeniable. Ellen turned away, shoulders shaking. Mara pressed a hand to her mouth, tears threatening for the first time. And Jace, steady, stoic Jace, finally looked like a man undone. "I only wanted to help," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." June stepped closer. "Then leave before you do." He hesitated, then nodded once, slow and final. "You're right." The silence that followed was different. Clean, hollow, like the air after a storm. He left the next morning before sunrise. No one saw him go, but his absence filled every corner of the house. Mara found his hat hanging on the porch rail. Ellen found his gloves by the barn door. And June, when she went to feed the horses, found a folded note tucked into a saddle strap. It said only one line: "You were the only place I ever felt at home." And though none of them spoke of it again, each sister carried that sentence differently, as guilt, as ache, and as something dangerously close to love. The morning Jace Holleran rode away from the Callahan ranch, Silvervale was still half asleep beneath a pale, milky sky. Mist clung to the grass, softening the edges of everything: the fences, the barn, the porch where so many words had been spoken and swallowed. It was the kind of morning that made a man wonder if he dreamed the life he was leaving behind. He saddled his mare in silence. The horse nickered softly, sensing his hesitation. He'd mended the fences, repaired the well, rebuilt what fire had stolen. But no hammer or nail could fix what lay behind him now. He'd written 3 letters, each folded and sealed, each tucked where they'd find them. One on the porch for Mara, one in the kitchen for Ellen, and one in the stable for June. He didn't sign his name on any of them. He didn't need to. When the first rays of light touched the fields, he swung into the saddle and rode east, away from Silver Vale, away from the life that had nearly become his. The echo of hooves on damp earth faded slowly, swallowed by the quiet morning. Inside the house, the sisters woke to absence. Ellen was the first to notice. She came downstairs, expecting the sound of boots by the door, the low hum of a man fixing something that didn't need fixing. But there was only stillness. On the table lay the letter, her name written in careful script. Her hands trembled as she opened it. You remind me of the fire I used to have before life taught me to fear what burns. Don't ever lose that, Ellen. Go where the wind calls you, just don't chase ghosts like me. She pressed the paper to her chest and wept, quiet and angry all at once. She'd wanted him to fight for her, to stay and make it right. But maybe this, his leaving, was his way of doing just that. In the barn, June found her letter tucked under the feed bucket. You were the kindness I didn't think still existed. Don't let the world harden you. And if you ever wonder whether I cared, know that I did. Enough to walk away. She read it twice, then folded it back into its crease. Her tears were silent, falling onto the hay. It hurt, oh it hurt, but beneath the pain was peace. Jace had never promised her forever. He'd simply shown her that love could exist without needing to be owned. And on the porch, Mara stood alone, her letter unopened for hours. She knew what it would say before she even looked. When she finally tore it open, the words were few. You taught me what strength really looks like. Not in standing tall, but in letting go. The paper shook in her hands. She sank onto the steps where he'd left his hat days before. And for the first time since her father's death, she let herself cry. Deep, silent sobs that felt like release and ruin all at once. By midday, word had spread that the drifter was gone. The ranch hand said they'd seen him riding toward the eastern hills, disappearing into the horizon like smoke. The sisters didn't go after him. They couldn't. Instead, they worked. Mara took charge again, repairing what was left of the barn. Ellen rode into town, trading livestock and grain, her face set like stone. June tended to the animals, humming softly, though her eyes kept drifting to the horizon. That night, they sat on the porch together, the three of them, side by side. The sky above was wide and full of stars, the kind Jace used to look at like they held some kind of answer. No one spoke for a long time. Then June whispered, "Do you think he'll ever come back?" Mara didn't answer. Ellen stared out at the fields. Finally, Mara said quietly, "I don't think men like him come back. I think they just keep riding till the world forgets their name." But deep down, where words didn't reach, they all knew the truth. They'd never forget his. Years passed before anyone spoke his name again. Silver Vale changed slowly, the way all quiet places do. The land healed first, grass growing where ash had once been, the wheat standing tall and gold under a gentler sun. The Callahan Ranch stood firm once more, its fences straight and its barns full. What had been nearly lost became something stronger, built not from luck, but from love that had been tested by fire and grief. The sisters, too, changed. Mara became the kind of woman the valley looked up to, steady, respected, her name spoken with a mix of admiration and fear. She kept the ranch running with the same iron will her father once had. But those who knew her best saw a softness behind her eyes. On quiet nights, she'd stand on the porch with a cup of coffee and stare toward the horizon, the place he'd ridden off to. She never said it aloud, but some part of her was always waiting. Ellen did what everyone said she never would. She stayed. But not out of defeat. The fire that once burned wild in her became something bright and purposeful. She started painting, barn walls first, then canvases. Her art caught the color of Silver Vale skies, the shimmer of heat on dry fields, the ache of things that never fully leave. Folks came from miles around to buy her work, though she refused to sell one painting, the one she kept above her bed, of a lone rider disappearing into the dawn. And June, gentle June, found her calling in the heart of town. She opened a small home for children orphaned by drought and sickness. No one should feel alone in this world, she'd say, and those who looked into her eyes could see the truth of that promise. She carried peace the way others carried scars. Together, the sisters built a new life. But beneath it all, his memory lingered like the scent of rain before a storm. Never gone, only waiting. Then one evening, just as summer began to fade into fall, The sky darkened over the ridge. Mara was in the field checking the fences when she heard it, the slow rhythmic sound of hooves against dry earth. At first she thought it was one of their ranch hands, but when she turned, her breath caught. A lone rider was cresting the hill. Broad shoulders, dusty coat, that same easy seat in the saddle. Her heart stuttered once, hard, and then went quiet. He rode closer, the sun dipping low behind him, painting the sky in gold and crimson. When he stopped by the fence, she saw it was really him. Jace Holleran, older now, his hair touched with silver, his eyes softer but no less steady. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the wind moving through the grass. "Mara," he said finally, his voice rough as gravel. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, though her hands trembled. "Maybe not," he said, "but I couldn't ride any farther without seeing this place again." Without seeing you all, word spread fast. Within an hour, Ellen came running down from the house, her face pale, paint still on her hands. June followed, wiping her palms on her apron. When they saw him, time seemed to fold. Like nothing and everything had changed at once. They didn't rush to him. They didn't cry or shout. They just stood there looking. Three women who had once loved the same man and a man who had once belonged to them all in different ways. Finally, June stepped forward, her voice soft. "You came back," he nodded. "The land called me home." And maybe that was true, or maybe it was them. That night, the four of them sat on the porch together. No apologies, no explanations, just laughter in small doses, silence where words weren't needed, and a peace none of them had known in years. As they talked, the sky opened once more, and rain began to fall. Not a storm this time, but a slow, forgiving drizzle that smelled of new beginnings. Jace tilted his hat back, eyes on the horizon. "Looks like Silvervale still knows when to forgive," he murmured. Mara smiled faintly. "So do we." And under that rain, gentle, steady, unending, the past finally washed clean.